a little bit of ignorance, right? So it's the problem with Christianity, right? So Godfrey, to answer your question, and to further Tasha's point, is that the PR Christianity that says Christianity is right and everything else is wrong. There's no other religion that does that, and the ones that do are extremists.
They call me childish. They call me the Holy Ghost, Son of the Most, Father. They don't know me.
Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tash, aka ZIMbarbieAN, and this is a safe space on the internet where we like to converse about different topics. I'm going to start with introductions, so if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tash. Hi guys, I'm Ruvimbo, aka the Biminator. I am brand development, and I'm also a part-time aircraft engineer.
And yourself?
Hey, I'm Chengeta Mayowe, and I am an author, a publisher, a spoken word artist, and the People's Cultural Heritage Ambassador.
I hear that. And yourself?
My name is Dennis. My name is Dennis.
And yourself?
Hey guys, my name is Godfrey, and I am a liker of things. Godly things.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
What are those? What are those?
Yeah, no. I mean, you'll find me in the media space, marketing space, entertainment space, just doing really cool stuff. Yeah, and I'm very excited about being here. Thanks, Tash.
Oh, dope. Thank you guys for being here. The topic for today is religion. I'm going to start with Dennis. So my first question is, what is your understanding of heaven and hell?
Jeez, that's such a tough question.
I know.
Right into it. And this may be a little bit different. There's a book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And the premise of the book is that heaven and hell aren't really like a real thing. Essentially, what religion is based off of is your actual conversations with God or your actual specific relationship with God. But that a lot of the things that you do in terms of like right or wrong are, essentially elements that are just built off of the environment that you're born in. So if you're born in Zimbabwe, chances are you're Christian, right? If you're born in Baghdad, chances are you're Muslim. And because I think it will be different in different places, and the folk tales will say different things, but I think essentially I do believe in heaven or hell.
Okay. And yourself, Godfrey? What's your understanding of heaven?
So my understanding is, I think it's two-pronged. Each place is perhaps has a physical geolocation of sorts, I guess. And also perhaps it's a state of mind or a state of being, if I can say. So I've just read about it in various media, but also from the Bible, that heaven is an actual place where God is. So where God is, heaven is experienced where you are. And of course, the contrary would be that hell is where, the absence of God, or an actual place where perhaps there's suffering and pain and just eternal distress, compared to heaven, which is, peace, lovely, eccentric space where there's joy and really nice things, So though that before I get too deep into it, I guess, though that's my surface level understanding of heaven and hell.
Do you share the same sentiment, Chenge?
I agree with him that hell can be the absence of the creator, mainly because there are times when you're going through hell, there's no other word to describe what you'll be going through than hell, literally. And then there are times when there's peace. But I also believe that there is a hell after life, because there is no way we're going to continue going like this, especially with the way everything is just eroded from way back when up until where we are now. I just refuse to believe that we're going to continue this way even in 200, 300 years, but who knows? There are times when things happen and you just start the rapture. Start it. It's okay.
And yourself, Bims? What's your understanding of heaven and hell?
My take is, I think it's coming from everyone's input, really. Like it's a state of mind. And like Dennis was saying, born in Zimbabwe, you're automatically Christian. So I also believe there's a place, hell, where the devil resides and smells of sulfur and it's hot. Then you've got heaven, there's gold, angels, good, singers, alto, whatnot. So I do believe in the Christian side of it, there's a place. But I personally, I think it's actually a state of being as oneself. Yeah, you can create your heaven and you can also create your hell. Yeah.
I think, like, for me personally, I definitely resonate with that. And I think it's very interesting that to have people with very different backgrounds and very different beliefs, but kind of having the same, pretty much the same understanding of what heaven and hell is. Because for me, I think that, when you're going through life, when you do something bad and you feel guilty, that's your hell.
Yeah.
When you feel that dread, etc., when you do something good and you feel good about yourself, that's your heaven. And I personally believe that heaven and hell are like the feelings that you get when you do certain things that have certain results.
Returns, yeah.
But I'm actually going to deviate from that. We'll come back. It'll all make sense. But I want to ask, is religion something that informs your relationships, the relationships you get into, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship? Is it important to you that the person you're with aligns with whatever it is you believe?
Sure. That's such a good question.
I'll start with you, actually, Godfrey.
Yeah. So religion, I think, so I love definitions. And I think it's just so important to help you understand something and make sense of it all, So yeah, like religion, what is it? And I think if I remember off the top of my head, religion is an institution. It's a structured way of thinking, structured way of living, and it also shapes a view or a purview of life and spirituality, right?
Right.
And so when it comes to relationships, relationships entail a lot of decisions, right? And I think the best decision you can make relies on the best information you have at your disposal to make that decision. And so religion presents a lot of information. Religion presents a lot of information about spirituality, deity, morals, and so forth. And so, yeah, like, I would say then, with my past relationships, friendships, like platonic relationships, family relationships, or romantic relationships, have all been influenced by religion in one way or another. So I identify as a Christian, right? Or a Bible-believing, God-believing Christian, right? And that definitely has compelled me to pay attention to the decisions I make in my relationships, because Christianity comes with certain guidelines, rules, moral compass of sorts. And so, yeah.
So you want to be with someone who aligns to the same.
Yes, ideally, it would be useful.
Yeah.
So because now there's also a thing about agreement, right? The quality of your relationship can weigh a lot on what you agree on. And so, yeah, values, principles, etc.
Dennis, do you feel the same way? Do you think it's important to be with someone who has the same belief system as you do?
I think it's hard to find someone who shares the exact same belief system as you do, especially if it's unconventional in any way, right? Because for the most part, I don't know if anyone believes in exactly the way that I believe it. And I also believe in the Bible. I'm a Christian for sure. But even if I was to put that to the side for a second, right, the equal yoking or whatever, if I was to put that to the side, I'd still say it matters to me that someone's religious, even if it's not Christianity, right?
Yeah.
Because what religion has definitely successfully done is ground people, right? So across different religions, the one thing that you're going to find is, don't murder, don't kill, don't steal, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are all and whether your religion is telling you that it's going to result in bad karma, it's telling you that
you go to hell,
go to hell,
whatever the consequences.
There's something that's telling you to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I think those
That's
people,
so good.
on average, are going to end up being better people.
I hear that. And yourself, Chenge, do you think it's important to be with someone who has the same belief system as you do?
I think it is. I mean, My dad was a spiritual cultural man. My mom also believed in culture and spiritual, but she was also going to church. I've literally been in SDA, Roman Catholic, Anglican, Protestant. Like, I've been
Shinobvumidzwe
whether shinobvumidzwe or not, it's God at the end of the day. Only God
online
can judge
shopping
me.
in my church.
Only God can judge me. No, my dad was kind of like, go see what you like. I'm not going to stop you, but you need to understand that there is a God, and you don't do A, B, C, D, E. He never went to church. However, when he died, did we not just find out he was basically paying school fees for a whole village? He helped someone in hospital. He was doing the works that you're supposed to do, right? Because it's all good saying I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, you know, I practice Chiwanu, but are you doing the practices religiously?
Right.
Or are you just saying it for show?
Which is also, it leads on to my very next question, which is how much is it important to be with someone who's like, yeah, I'm a Christian too, even if they don't behave in like, so for example, from my experience, say with like people of certain religions, not just with Christianity, but like people who are Muslims or whatever the case may be, they'll be like, I can only date Muslim girls. And then to me, it's like it discounts a lot, because I think you're making a lot of excuses by assuming that just because you're also Muslim, you're going to be virtuous in some way or like have the characteristics that are associated with that. When to me, people, no matter what religion you're going to be in, you're still an individual, and the way you behave is the way you behave. Like,
but there's some like fundamental issues that come up in relationships, right? For instance, how you're going to raise kids, where you're going to live, whether you're going to eat pork in that house or not, or whatever, right? And like the pork thing is on the lower end of the spectrum. Like you could just eat different things. But when it comes to like the more fundamental things, like how you raising your kids, you're going to have, it's going to be such a friction point that sometimes I feel like it may just not be worth it to go down that path. So even if someone was a not so virtuous Christian, I think the aspirational side of them will always, you know, be something that they look to. And because they look to it, when it comes to the decision-making process, even if they're not practicing, it's easier to convince them of a certain thing. If I say that I'm Christian and I say I want to take the kids to church, it's easier for that to happen than if you're a great person, but you're Muslim and I'm Christian. And
I know, you know, like, I like what you said. Oh, I like what you're saying, Aaron, and I think just to add on to it, there's the, like, relationships are hard. Right? Relationships are hard, and so I think there is an element of, like, so when I answered you on what I would prefer, right, I did say that it would be useful or convenient even, right, that being a Christian, I would date firstly perhaps, and then perhaps marry another Christian as well, because then there's less friction points and it's just convenient for me to express certain things without too much friction or any friction at all from you, because you get it, right? Whereas if it's just like, I can, but should I, right? Because then if I marry someone who's not a Christian, I can, right? But the should I part comes in with what Dennis is saying.
Of list resistance.
Like, so
you're taking a path of list resistance.
You know, so with what Dennis was saying, that you know, if now it's very fundamental decisions that are being made in this relationship, and what extends beyond that relationship, those friction points can be avoided if there's just alignment from the get-go.
I'm interested, and I'll start with you, Vince. Do you think it's easier to go through life being of a certain religion or not? So, for example, if you're a Muslim, do you think it's easier to go through life being like, I'm a Muslim, and then going through life being an atheist, in terms of like maybe how the world perceives you? Whether that's like being a Muslim, being a Christian, being Jewish, whatever it is, like, do you think it's easier to be in a certain religion and go through life as that, or like as an atheist?
Okay, I think as the world becomes a global village and, you know, people are in this period of acceptance, in certain spaces in the world, being of a certain group, it's culturally, socially acceptable. And it's actually beneficial financially. Like, for example, in America, if you're a Jew, like it opens doors for you.
Yeah.
You know,
your channel's getting taken down.
Then come back to Zimbabwe. You know, if you're from, let's say, if you practice African Traditional ATR, right? African Traditional Religion, and most the majority here is Christians. And you want to go to people and be like, I practice ATR, people are going to be a bit skeptical. Like,
Yeah. Or like, oh, but Unoroya.
You know, I know better.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, like, different spaces come with different doors.
Right.
Certain religions come with doors automatically opening. If you're a Zimbabwean, you're a Christian, I'm sure, people will be willing to, talk to you, converse with you, give you something. But then if you come and you're like, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, people will be looking at you crazy, like, who raised you? So I think being of a certain religion group has certain benefits.
Right.
Yeah, so
But
definitely.
I also just think that people miss the whole point of religion. People are so into I am a whatnot, and yet they practice nothing of what they are, and they spend their time judging somebody else.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to bring you to where they are. But then when you look at who they are, what they're saying and their works, it does not go hand in hand at all. It's just like me. I believe in the spiritual side of things. That's where I am. I believe in what we had before colonizers came. That's what I believe in. Because we didn't pray to a devil. We actually had the word for the creator, which is Musiki, like the creator of everything. People came and they gave their own definitions, and then they suppressed who we were.
Right.
And then now there's this friction, but we're all saying the same thing. Right. And then they taught you the parts. Most people were taught the parts that suppress them. That when people grow older and they actually read the Bible, for those who actually read the Bible, they will actually tell you that I had no idea that this was spoken about. I had no idea that this was in there. Because they're now reading, because they've only ever been taught the curriculum.
Right.
And not the full book. Right. And I'm here and I'm learning about our culture and things. And granted, sometimes I get looked at like, oh, she weird. Oh, she must be doing this. And it's okay. But if you stand with who you are and you understand where you're coming from, it's better off. Because that's where you find people are out here, some papa comes and you're willing to lick the whole floor because he's a man of God. What part of the Bible tells you to lick a whole floor for a man who's not Jesus? Even Jesus didn't tell you to lick the ground.
My quick answer to your question was... Sorry, I want to respond to that, but my response to that is, I think there's a lot of peace that comes with knowing that there's a force bigger than you are. And I think for a lot of people, that's what you're searching for, whether you're looking for it in whatever religion. But just to go back to this licking of floors, right? Which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
So at what point, right, in a pretty illogical thing, right? Like religion is mostly faith-based. And faith is the promise of things unseen and something, right? But it's essentially what we're talking about here are things that we're not certain of, but things that we believe.
Yeah.
So you're drawing the line at licking floors, where someone else is drawing the line at believing in a deity that they've never seen. And for you, it seems so ridiculous that someone's licking floors. For someone else, it seems so ridiculous that you even just believe in that.
Yeah.
And like, do you not feel like that's a little bit unfair to those people that believe in the licking of floors because it just feels irrational to you, even though a lot of what you do is irrational to other people?
That's true.
Fair.
However, the Bible actually is what someone once said, it's what basic instructions before leaving earth. There was someone who said that, right? So you have the instruction manual, right? And then there's some people who are literally told to do things that go against what's in your manual. That shows you're not even reading the manual. You don't understand it. You're just taking things at face value. You're not even understanding. You're just saying, I am this. but you don't even
But you
know
don't
what
know
you are.
what. Okay.
Because knowing what you are is studying the actual Bible, because that is a central part of Christianity, is it not?
100%. And like, just for context, I also think a lot of it is ridiculous, right? But at the same time, the point that I'm trying to make is, when you now talk about the Bible, right, there's a lot of context that involves that, like, this book was written 2,000 years ago. There's no talk in the Bible, but you shouldn't do crystal meth. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, because it wasn't a thing that was happening. Or like the way that different like pastors or preachers or whatever will go about their processes. I saw Mike Todd spitting on his brother, right? And he was making a point. In fact, I saw a video later on where he was explaining that he had this conversation. It wasn't the first time that he had done that specific thing either. But those are argued, and that's what they believe, right? But in this context, there's no one to have warned you that you shouldn't be licking floors 2,000 years ago. There may not have been floors at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, so like we have to look at it in the context of it's a constantly evolving thing, and the relationship with God is one that's existing. You're praying every day. God is talking to you. So if God tells you tomorrow to lick floors, you lick floors. You don't say, but it's not in the Bible.
I know. And I think it's also very trust-based and like, what's it called? Purposive interpretation. So for example, even if the Bible doesn't say lick floors, it does say like there is a man of God that like whatever they're saying is within what I'm wanting. So in a way it's saying lick floors. If your man of God is saying lick floors. You know what I mean?
But also I'll just say study your Bible, mate. Study your Bible.
Isn't it so unfortunate though? Just a quick remark that people demonize what they don't understand. I think some stuff like that happens, and I think it's unfortunate. Although it makes sense, right? And again, I'll stress that if you are then connecting with someone who isn't on the same page as you are, you need to be as open and willing to embrace the differences that stand between you two without demonizing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
You know, I think, you know, there's a certain level where we need to weigh an understanding that I think all of us can get to agree with whatever we believe in, right? But I think when some people demonize certain things, I think it should be socially acceptable, because it's like, what's going on over there? Like what happened in Kenya, where 70-something people committed, involuntary, we can call it that, suicide, when they starved themselves because they were believing that the men of God were saying, in order to meet your Messiah or Savior, you have to fast or starve yourself. Yeah. And, you know, from the outside looking in, I mean, you cannot blame people for demonizing such actions, because, okay, yes, you are a man of God and you want your followers to get certain results, but some of these things we need to really consciously ask ourselves, like, is this...
Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights.
Exactly. Yeah. And that will be the basis on which people are basing that on. So I think it even goes to my next question, which is
But he didn't die, though.
Well, because he's Jesus. Because it goes to my next question, which is about the PR of certain religions. So, for example, you already touched on it in terms of, like, if you're Jewish and, like, if you're Muslim or if you're Christian, the connotations for that are very different to, like, if you practice African traditional religion, etc. Because how people view you is very different. To me, it goes down to the people that have had the power of messaging over time and have been able to build their narrative the best, and it's the PR of religion. That's what I call it. Yeah. So, for example, when you're speaking about, these people who were actually what some would say is a cult, but because it's somewhat aligned with Christianity, people will be averse to calling it that, because Christianity has such strong PR. And I wonder to myself, why do we have these perceptions of certain religions, of cults, or like as if a cult is a bad thing. Like, we know kind of a cult is a bad... I know it's a hot take. We know kind of that a cult is a bad thing, but what's the difference between a cult and a church, really?
Let me argue.
Can I say this? So I want to say this, and because I've seen it happen a lot in recent times, where there's a thing where if you're talking about something or someone, right? But let's keep it at something. That thing can be independent in its nature, its meaning, and what it stands for and represents, and what its use can be, right? So, like, and I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's still related. In how the other day we were talking about music, right? And someone effectively demonized a genre. And I was like, wait, if you define what a genre is, a genre in itself can't necessarily be bad or evil, right? It's just a vehicle that carries particular messaging that can be good or bad, right? And so, like, within, if we say, like, with what we're talking about now, right? If people, like I said, religion is a system, right? It's a way of thinking, it's a way of life. It's then the messaging in it that can be questioned, right? And so, like, with Christianity, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Muslim religion or ATR, as you guys mentioned, it in itself isn't bad, I would say. It's what it purports that can be good or bad, right? So from my understanding and purview, Christianity has values that are appealing and useful and edifying for me. That's why I subscribe to it. Otherwise, if it wasn't the case, I would have picked another religion.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying? But to say Christianity in itself is then whatever. Yeah. So just something just to. Yeah.
But where do we draw the line?
Which is pretty much where I was going to go as well. So when we talk about Christianity and Islam or whatever, right? Like, we're bunching Christianity together, which is essentially so many different things. It's actually essentially where the cults are inside Christianity, right? So it's not Christianity or cults. It's like the cult in Christianity. And again, for me, it's where are you going to say that someone is now being irrational? If I'm going to religion, and my reason for religion is, one, I'm looking for the guidance on how to be a better person, right? If that cult is giving that to me, then is it really a bad thing? The second thing is, I'm looking for peace, right? I want to know that if I pray, I am being heard. If there's someone who can make me believe that this is the specific way that you're going to be listened to, pound for pound, that person's happier on a day-to-day basis than we are on the outside. So, like, just going back to the licking of floors, if I lick, if I lick a floor today and it's going to make me feel more optimistic about my life,
You'll lick them every day.
Then it's
then
worked.
why am I not licking floors?
So can I just say? Sorry, I just remembered what the real point of what I wanted to say was. So I was sort of buzzing on what you said about cults. I am actually with you in that I don't think a cult in itself is a bad thing. It's just what the cult does that can be questionable, right? Because then Christianity has cult-like tendencies. If I can say.
Now,
like
other religions have cult-like tendencies.
Yeah. So like
religion
when
has
you think about it,
holiness.
because Jesus did the most. He was very provocative.
Yeah.
Everyone did
And
that.
saying outlandish things. Like to be one of the
Someone was
disciples at that time, you're weird, bro.
Yeah,
Like, you're following some guy who's just decided I'm the
Someone
Messiah.
And like, you had a job, bro. Like, you actually had a job. And this is
Someone
what happens,
actually
right?
said-
People quit their jobs to go join their cults, and you're like, he's
Now it's a problem.
He's either part of a cult or he's doing drugs. Yeah. That's exactly what you thought
Someone
about
said
Matthew.
if it was modern day, can you imagine if it was modern day and he goes and all of these elders, right? One wakuru, and then he turns the water into wine. Do you know Zichi? Chidakwa.
Exactly.
Like, kill that person.
Yeah.
You know? He's out here, he's raising people from the dead. Everybody would run away.
But then, like, it's interesting to me that, like, when we speak about it now, we can see the correlations. But in terms of how the messaging is out there. Like, Kunzi, what I'm cult, bruh. You're like, no, I would never. I'm smarter than that. What do you mean?
Right.
But then for anyone to attack someone's religion, like, it's really like, how very dare you? You know? And it's like, where do we draw the line? And how have we decided what's a good cult and what's a bad cult?
Yeah.
So where I think the line should be is where you start to affect other people, right?
Yeah.
So,
You're gonna step
for
on
instance,
toes.
if your form of Christianity involves child marriage, essentially, and if it involves having 7 wives that are of age, bro, more power to you. If you guys are agreeing, sharp. But if it gets to people who don't have, the basic contractual capacity to be able to consent to this, then it starts to be an issue. Outside of that, bro.
Can I add though that I think it's frustrating, and to me it bothers me how in this world there's so many tensions over what people define, what people perceive, if it's something that's objective versus something that's subjective. Right. There's a lot of relativity as well, and so trying to get to a concrete truth that governs everyone, or at least that is readily accepted by everyone, is very difficult. And so, like, speaking to what you're saying, that Tash and Dennis both highlighted on it, that so then which cult is good, or which cult is less creepy or less damaging, and there has to be a level of objectivity to determine that, right? Because then can we then objectively say across the board in the world universally that perhaps child marriage is bad, or that reasoning behind killing is bad or good, whatever. So, because then, I'll end by giving this example, which is a bit of a tangent, but still related, in that if it's things like marriage and lobola and stuff, right? In this part of the world, the man, from a patriarchal point of view, is the one who pursues, initiates, and whatever. But there's somewhere out in the world where the woman does that.
Yeah, India.
Right? You know what I mean? So in our parts of the world, child marriage, for example, is shunned upon, but somewhere out in the world, it's totally fine.
And somewhere out in the world, someone's looking at lobola and they're like, they're selling y'all bitches.
Yeah.
Like, it's all
You know what I'm saying? So that's that relativity,
I
that's
think at the end of the
subjectivity.
day, you shouldn't care about someone's PR. You should care about yourself. If you are a Christian, care about making the PR for Christianity better through your works and your own beliefs.
Okay.
As opposed to caring that these people have bad PR or whatever.
Cap.
Personally.
Like, I hear that and I understand it in terms of, like, in its purest form, that you want people, like I always say this,
Worry
it's
about
easy
yourself.
to be politically correct. It's easy to want to say the right thing. And should it be that way? Sure. However, there's literally been people throughout history who have been persecuted and killed for believing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so if we go by the mentality of, like, just believe what you want and everything's going to be okay, I don't think that's fact. And I think it does a disservice to how much persecution people face for not being in alignment with whatever is popular at the time.
Yeah.
That's true. But if you believe in yourself and you stand strong in yourself, persecution will always be there. It's never going to end.
Do you think there's a little bit of privilege in your ability to stand so steadfast about your beliefs? Like, having the kind of personality that's strong enough to be around other people who are saying that what you're saying is absolutely ridiculous, and you're like, you know what, this is what I believe. I don't think that's something that people can do generally.
Yeah, because it's a mammoth task.
I do agree with you that I am, if you want to call me whatever, you call me whatever. It's good on you. Like, that's literally just where I've gotten to my point.
Yeah.
Then if you're curious or you have questions, you can come to me and I answer them. I am literally, that's the kind of person that I am literally, that it is what it is. Because it's a Christian nation, so the Christian influence has been there. And I take from all of the holy books, because they all, like we said earlier, they all say the same thing: do not murder, do not steal. They all roughly say the same thing. So I take from all of the holy books. One of my closest friends is a Muslim, and I've noticed how, above any other people I've come across, they always praise the Creator in most of the things that they do. I'm going to the doctors tomorrow. May it all be well, inshallah. they receive a text that they've been waiting for, alhamdulillah. They see something beautiful, mashallah. They're literally praising his name in all of the things that they're doing. I've literally learned from watching her. So I guess it's different because I'm one of those people who likes to learn from different people.
Yeah.
If I like how you look at Christianity and the Bible, I'm going to learn from you. If I like how you look at Buddhism, I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to look at the good PR side of things because it's not up to me to judge the bad side. I'm not God.
Can I express a bit of a concern or danger to the whole, this is what I'm about, so let me be, if I understood the way you put it. So from a Christian point of view, there's a particular belief that all men, like all humans, are inherently sinful. Right? So if we leave you to your vices, to be just, this is who I am, let me be, you will cause a whole lot of anarchy.
You could. But at the end of the day, it's just like he said. If I believe and I'm praying to my God, and I'm doing things in my faith, faith as well, who are you to tell me that I'm an anarchy?
Yeah, no,
because
but-
if licking floors is bringing what I want and I'm saying in the name of
Okay,
whatever.
wait. I think I'm just then reiterating what I've already said, that there has to be a level of objectivity that governs life, that whether we accept it or not.
And that's there in everything
but
else that
also,
goes, the good
Godfrey,
and the
that's
bad.
also dangerous, being stuck in a place. Because if everyone was to think the same, like we should follow a certain way of doing things, then us as women as well will be stuck in the past. We wouldn't be empowered
I
as
disagree.
we are. I'm saying that there's some people who come to the stage, like Chenga is saying, that brings certain knowledge and wisdom that we were not even aware of, or even not even open to already. Like if someone comes with that, I'm like, because you're already stuck in a certain belief, you know. But then she's seen certain benefits from it, and it would actually benefit a nation as well, like how other religions have also benefited other nations. So I think for us to be stuck, I think it's also dangerous to be saying no, don't be an individual when it comes to certain things.
Which I agree with, because my next question was actually going to be, do you feel that in whatever belief you practice, that you have room for opinions outside of your belief structure? So, for example, if I'm a Christian and I have certain beliefs on like LGBTQ rights or like abortion, or if I'm like, you know, if you practice in spirituality and then you have your Muslim friend and then you're like, I'm going to start fasting when they're fasting, or whatever it is. Like, do you think that within whatever you believe, you have room to pivot?
So you
100%.
So you do have room. It's, I think so. Like I'll respond by putting it this way. Life happens, right? But how you respond matters, right? So if right now I get a phone call that a very close relative has gotten into an accident, right? How I respond matters, and it's influenced by my beliefs and my faith and my hopes and things. So as a Christian, I've heard some people say, you're a child of God, so you shouldn't feel sad. You should never be poor. And that, like, anything negative or perhaps undesirable shouldn't be because you're a child of God, which I don't think is accurate. In that it's more of, like, I mean, what I learned is that you will face troubles, but you can exercise faith and hope that you get through that and whatever. So my point then is, like, you will feel something and you will think outside of particular parameters, if I can say.
Yeah.
But then how you respond to those thoughts, for example, or opinions, is actually what really matters.
Well,
What
how
is
do you
this-
like to respond? Like, what's the appropriate response to whatever feelings you have that are outside of?
Okay, so, like, okay, I'll give you an example from the Bible, like David, right? David, or Job even, but I think I'll keep to David. David is, he at the time he was, I don't want to make this a sermon, but he was already anointed, he was already set to be a king, but he faced rejection and all of this stuff from his family.
Right.
And it was like, so from rejection, it's natural for you to feel to doubt and to feel sad and disappointed, right? But then how you responded was to remain faithful to the anointing and the prophecy that was placed upon
Like,
you.
I hear that, but I don't get it. Because, like, in terms of what I'm asking, if you today decided that, like, okay, I know the Bible says that
Don't have sex.
I shouldn't, like, or even, like, premarital sex or certain things that are said to be bad. Okay, let's take an extreme example. The Bible says I shouldn't murder. But now murdering is popular and like everybody's doing it. I've kind of changed my views on murder. Like, do you feel like you have a room to pivot within your religion? And also, what does that do to the community aspect? Because a lot of people are in certain religions for the community. Like, you have like-minded people that you're able to be around. Are you still able to have that community once you've pivoted? Like, once you've decided, I accept LGBTQ people, abortion rights, I'm pro-choice or whatever. What does that do to the community of the reason you're in the religion?
It's a fantastic question.
Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to say is like, okay, like, you're faced with what is prescribed, right? And then there's how you respond to what is prescribed. So like, you are going to feel.
Let's use abortion.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Okay. So abortion is a conversation on death and life, right? So from a Christian point of view, it's set in stone, right? It's very objective. Do not kill. There's no clause. There's no exception. There's no nuance. Yeah, like, even if it says, like, and this is also very hectic. If someone's been raped and they fall pregnant, from a natural and human point of view, right, you can feel like, shucks, this baby doesn't deserve to come into this world in this kind of way. You can reason against what the Bible says, right, from a natural point of view. But unfortunately, and I think that's where the objectivity comes in, which people will disagree with naturally.
It's like, that's just what it is.
That's just what it is. Take it or leave. Like, there's no democracy. I don't know how you pronounce it. There's no democracy with Christianity, actually, right? And that's what people don't like about it.
But then earlier you said you said something about we're all sinful creatures.
Yeah.
That's the natural order of life.
Yeah.
So though we have the 10 commandments for some is 15, whatever. You have these commandments, you're supposed to abide by them.
Yeah.
But we're sinful beings.
So
naturally you're going to fall, because there's none of you who can tell me you've never lied before.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
sorry. So the thing with the idea of sin, right? And I agree with Godfrey that Christianity is not a democratic thing. It's not something that you guys can evolve to be whatever you feel.
And bring your Twitter
definitions. This is how I feel. Like, I want my Christianity to be.
Have you seen 21st century Christians? It's like Christianity is going through a revolution. Like, they will they'll pick certain phrases in the Bible and I'm forgetting the verse. In Genesis somewhere, it said something like they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Like, there are two intentions when God is now functioning. Like, whatever you're going through, and you're going through an abortion or whatever. So that's evil, but God actually meant it for good. So one day you can then testify when you're an obedient Christian that, this happened to me. I looked at it as something that was evil, but it was turned around for my good. God meant it for good. That's how Christians
say that Christianity is going through something, but the Bible isn't.
Yeah.
No.
The Bible stays the
Christianity
same.
is not going through anything. Christianity is what it's always been, right? But then there are a lot of people that like the idea of being Christian, or like they're attached to being
associated
with Christianity, right? But then there are things they don't like. And the point that you made earlier was, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, right? 100%. But the difference is, for the things that I sin about, I don't go about saying, no, Christianity should now allow me to lie.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you know
You're
what?
supposed to ask for forgiveness.
And I think that's the revolution that's happening. Not
Yeah.
necessarily in terms of people changing the meaning of, not necessarily in terms of Christianity changing or the Bible changing, but I think it's like a societal thing that's happening in general. Where like, if I'm now identifying as trans, everyone must accept me as that. And if I'm now identifying that, like, you know, abortion shouldn't be something that's looked down upon in Christianity, everyone should support me on that. And
yet
so it's
the
not
manual
necessarily
itself
the
hasn't
manual
changed.
that's changing,
It's never
but it's
changed.
like, no, it's supposed to be. You guys claim that it's a living, breathing document that's going to transverse over culture, and that's why it's been able to survive over these years. So it should be able to change to what society is right now. But then I guess that goes into the question that I was going to ask, which is, at what point is religion diluted if we bring in these kinds of things where it's like, okay, how we feel today is how religion should now be, what's it called? How do you interpret it as? Yeah.
I think religion has been diluted for some time now. Like, even if you look at history, there's been so much conditioning that has even happened that some people choose to intentionally even forget and not even acknowledge. Like, even how the Anglican Church came about. That was the royal family using religion to their advantage, you know? So people have misconstrued religion. I want us not to deny how people have used also religion to change how even today's generation even view religion or how they want to partake in religion. It's something that has evolved over the years. Even how people were staunch back in the days, you don't see that happening nowadays. You know, even with Muslims, they're very self-disciplined, but you get your few characters that we bump into, and
They
not-
even call each other out and say,
But-
in the holy month of Ramadan, everybody's set.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes they say, but after Ramadan, you're back to your usual setting. So
Yeah.
what were you fasting for?
Exactly.
You know.
You see now. Anyway, it was something anyway.
But so
won't get into it
I
right now.
really dislike the idea of Christianity going through a revolution, and it keeps being said. Christianity is not going through a revolution. People are going through what they're going through, right? Christianity is
We are
what it's always been.
rebelling.
But if Dennis now
that's
comes up
it.
today and he says, you know what, I am whatever I am, right? And I feel like Christianity should accept me as I am. Which, leading to the point I was making, I'm not sure which church it was. But anyway, it might be Hillsong, but I'm not sure. They had a gay worship leader, right?
It was.
And I think there's an important conversation that you can have about the fact that this guy shouldn't be told that he shouldn't be singing in church, right? Because everyone else who's in that congregation is a sinner also. But that does not equate to saying that Christianity condones that. So I can condone it in my personal capacity, which I do, but I can't then go and say that a religion that's based off of specific facts and rules is supposed to be behaving that way also. And which is again people talking about that Qatar thing and people wanting to wear their pride stuff too. It's like, bro,
no, you're in this country, these are the rules of the country.
just do what they do.
Just
Be by the rules of
Or cancel them.
let no perish.
Oh wow!
But guys, again with practical, I think when you make it real, right? In the light of these kinds of conversations, in recent times we've been seeing the whole thing of, I guess, objectively, you are, or biologically and scientifically, you are a male, for example. But then you claim then to identify as a woman, and then you go compete in a women's competition, and then you blaze all the records.
Guys,
So no, but I mean, no, guys, I'm just trying to highlight the whole aspect of this is like when you're trying to separate yourself from a world that has everyone else, and then projecting or trying to get people to conform to what is individual to you, it's difficult. And yeah, I don't want to say anything else besides that.
I know,
I'd really love
but
to
I
have that
feel
conversation.
because I 100% agree, because it's so funny because Jay and I were having this conversation and he's like, but don't say that outside. Hello outside.
Switch on the cameras.
Wow.
Lights, camera, action.
So here's my perspective. I think that, and it goes back to exactly what I was saying. Like I maintain the same energy with every topic. That it's not necessarily that I disagree with like people identifying as different things. I do. I think that it's not fair for people to be like, now everybody should change how they do things to accommodate me. That's where I draw the line, because now as society, I think it's not just in terms of trans rights, it's not just in terms of Christianity and religion. Like we're drawing so many hard lines for each other.
Don't subscribe to
like there's no gray areas anymore, because it's either you're with me or you're against me. And to me, I think that's a very damaging place for us to be in society, because it's really hard to converge. And so like even when it comes to religion, right? The idea that like it's either you're a Christian or you're not, to me, makes it hard to converge even within Christianity. Even if it's either you're religious or you're not, okay, but like which religion? What kind of Christian? What you know what I mean? And then like we're creating so many pockets of like separation. And if we've already decided that it's gonna be easier for me to have a relationship with and a child with someone who believes the same as me, you're again minimizing that pocket. And then it's like my children, I want them to also be with people that believe the same as I do, and and then again the pocket gets smaller, you know what I mean? So from my perspective, it's like, how are we able then to converge and still be a society that believes in different things? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do. So there was a point that Ben Shapiro, I can't believe I'm quoting Ben Shapiro, but there was a point that he made about...
the bar is small.
But he was talking about gay marriage specifically, and his point, which I think I agree with, is I'm not against gay marriage. I definitely believe that if you love each other, you should get married. 100%. However, maybe it shouldn't take place in a church. And let's not even talk about it from the people in the church saying that they don't want you there. But let's talk about the fact that you... Let's talk about the fact that this is what you're doing, right? And it goes against the place where you're having this. It's literally like having your wedding in a place where people don't want you. Like all your guests don't want you to be getting married. It doesn't have to happen in the church, and it can still happen.
It's the vendors in Pablo's.
Because guys, can I just
say we support you as vendors, but not in church.
Yes,
I'm sure it's having gay people. Wanting to get married in church. I feel like it's them also wanting to be accepted by religion, but it's like it's not that deep. You can start your own religion, and you can just get married in a garden and make it very pretty. You know,
and like with anything, I always think that with anything that you believe, there's like 100% chance you're not the only person that believes that. So, for example, there are a lot of gay people, and there's no reason why you can't have a church that subscribes to the same Bible and does the same things where you can get married. But it's more so like, why are you fighting so hard to be accepted by people that have already said they won't accept you?
It's actually bad for your mental health.
Can I say something to what Dennis has said? Like, there's a thing on jurisdiction, right? Or governance in all of this that again just influences these decisions, especially with relationships and stuff, right? So like someone mentioned, is it Qatar? Where was Qatar?
Yeah, it's Qatar.
Right? They have a way that they do things, and it's like if someone comes to your house, bro, and there's a way that you govern your rules in your house, and then they want to say no, but at our house we do this.
Yeah, like what do you mean?
No. So and I think it's then fair. So to bring it back to relationships, then that I can say, look, this is how I live my life, and this is how I would perceive my life going in the light of marriage and family. Are you about it or not? You know, and if someone's then not about it, then I keep it moving. But for someone to say, no, I'm not about it, but I still want it to happen, therefore you should change, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's reasonable. And it's just too much work.
I also just don't think it's good for you,
Yeah.
the person who's getting married, to be getting married in an institution where you don't feel like you're being supported. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a special day, man. You should be able to be.
Feel special.
You should feel special. You feel
enjoy
accepted.
it.
You should feel like. And I think the church just becomes the wrong place to do that.
Fair enough. I think I'm going to pivot 100% and bring up this question because I think we're amongst certain expertise and I'll be remiss if I don't indulge. What is your understanding of, and I'll start with you because you actually brought it up. What is your understanding of ATR? Like, what's your understanding of African traditional religion?
Okay. Okay, my understanding of ATR is the beliefs that we as Africans practiced, like Chenge said, before we were colonized. It was the gods that we believed in and certain ways that we lived our lives and worshipped and prayed.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I believe ATR is, and rituals and everything that we did as African people.
I get that. I would agree. After that, I don't know anything else. Like, nothing. Do you guys have any?
Yeah, very basic, to be honest. But my actual take is that most of these mainstream religions are just a difference in interpretation.
Yeah.
But the actual like fundamentals of it, right? So whether you're talking about God, Allah, or Musika, and whatever, it's essentially the same thing.
Yes.
It's the person who made it, right?
Yeah.
And then the actual guiding principles of the religions are also pretty similar. Like, be a good person. Don't be a good person.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's the same. I think it was our interpretation of pretty much the same religion.
Sure.
Can I also say, like, so ATR is what? African Traditional Religion, yeah?
Yes.
So, it's very region oriented, right? It's very context oriented as well, culture oriented, and so like my thing is you can have ATR, but you can also have ETR, European Traditional Religion,
And it's there.
You can also have
Christianity.
Asian.
Christianity.
You know what I mean? So,
And it's there, Tibet, where the monks are.
So I think so my thing is perhaps the tension points in that as much as there are sort of guiding principles that all religions can sort of speak about and relate to, I think it matters, like the key characters in each religion matter, right? So, for example, with Christianity, there's the Holy Trinity, whereas other religions only believe in one singular God, right? And then there's also the thing about salvation. There's also about the thing about your actions producing particular results. So for some people, in Christianity, salvation is given to you, whereas in the sense of salvation is earned in other religions. So with African tradition, I don't think there's too much. In fact, rather let me say, I don't know much about the salvation aspect of African traditional religion, which is interesting. And
yourself, like, what's your perspective? Like, what do you understand of African traditional religion?
What I understand of African traditional religion is Chiwano Chelu, it's how we were before. And to demonize how we were before is to call those who came before us demons. They did not worship the devil. They did not go around just killing and murdering people. That came with the colonizers. Came with the colonizers. And basically they had Musiki. Musiki is the creator of all. He's the one that rules the dominion over anything else that is underneath. There is nothing above. So in Islam, that's Allah. In Christianity, that's God. Right? I don't know what he's called in other religions.
Jehovah.
Can I throw the ball?
Yeah.
Right. And then how we did things, and I actually did a video on this, is that we had a protocol. Our people revered God so much that they did not go direct to him. They believed in going through the ancestors. Right. So for me, my father is late. So I pray and I'm like, this is my prayer, Dad. Can you take it to your grandfathers? And they take it until it reaches God. And if it so shall be in my life, then kindly guide me to get to it. And then you are guided towards what you're asking for. That's how you pray. In other means, it's called kuteura. That's what the word was. So that's how it literally worked. And they knew that you don't steal. They were actually guided by the same thing, and it's there in our Proverbs. It's literally there in our Proverbs. I'm like, they're all there. They all teach you something in terms of life. And that's how they taught. It's just unfortunate that our stuff was orally passed down.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that that's the way it was. But there are archives earlier on that actually have the details of this. When the colonizers were still just testing out, when there were still the Portuguese colonizers, not even the British ones. And they were coming and they were seeing. And they, in the archives, they state themselves that it's going to be difficult to bring in God because they know him already. We knew him. So that's what I believe in.
Oh, I think I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, that was so dope.
But like, it's very interesting to me because first of all, a lot of what you're saying, it's my first time hearing it. Like, I'm African, you know what I mean? Like, why didn't I get access? So from my perspective, like what you had said earlier, Godfrey, that people tend to demonize what they don't understand. And to me, I wonder why it is that like African religion seems to be like such a secret society. Like, it's like not many people are ready to explain or to invite you into it.
I think it's the same thing that these guys said. And they said that I have the privilege of having a strong character where I don't back down and you can call me what you want to call me and I don't care.
Right.
Then there are people who would just be like, and then they decide to perhaps just keep quiet. And then it's also just what I've been pushing for externally. That we have a whole Ministry of Cultural Heritage. Get to it. Like, teach people these things.
That's why I appreciate trailblazers like Chenge, because you know they open, you stand for what you believe in. And I always believe in standing for something or you fall for anything, which some of us as Africans have fallen for everything because we don't tell enough of our African stories. You know, we don't preach about why we were practicing this before XYZ came to the shorefront. Why did we stop? What happened? And I think it was Chief Charumbira, and he was even saying that even beating drums, there's a certain time in history where that was even demonized, like it was cancelled, like no African could beat drums at a certain time during pre-independence, you know. So I think most of us didn't know about that because we were actually forced, I think, to actually not practice is it indigenous religion? Is that the correct term?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So
I don't even know the term.
So that's probably, you know, what happened. And it is unfortunate because other religions, when you go to China, India, they practice their religions.
Yeah.
Then when you then come back to Africa, it's like, no.
Guys, can I ask then, is it a thing that people are conscious of when they sort of pit religions against each other, that this religion's better than this one, right? Is it a thing that people are conscious of? One. Two, because why I'm asking, right? It gives my interpretation of these discussions and even tensions when religion is being spoken about is that ATR is or was great, and then it got messed up by colonization, which I don't think is holistically reflective of the truth or what actually happens or what is on the ground.
Probably partially.
Yeah,
but we don't know the entire truth.
because let me put it this way. Because for me, my experience with the religion, which is Christian and perhaps Western Christian or even European Christian influenced, has demonized ATR. So whether it's by extension to what I've learned or even my own, and so I'm being transparent about this, right? Where I've like, okay, this ATR stuff, and so I'm asking to you guys, but also just presenting it as my own point, that understanding of, okay, is it, because it's come off as Christianity is the best, everything else is bad, right?
Because
wait. So Christianity is the best and the only and the right one, and everything else is bad, or should it be that there is Christianity, there's Buddhism, there's whatever, there's ATR, and then maybe one isn't better than the other, but that I see God better through this one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I hear that.
You know what?
I hear that.
I always talk about that God speaks in the way that you understand.
Yeah.
Right. So some people understand better if they're in a mosque. Some people understand better in a mountain. Kutibetu. Others
Even
understand
fabulous.
better. Yeah. You know.
Tagasian.
God is omnipresent.
God is everything for real.
So he can even minister to
God
you
is everywhere.
from the DJ's booth. That's the pulpit,
And then you
right?
get the
Where two
epiphany.
or more are gathered in my name.
I think it's interesting, especially bringing up what Godfrey had said, because I'm going to speak for myself as well. That like African religions in general, to me, it's either witchcraft or not.
Yeah.
Like that's all I know.
You know what I'm
because
saying?
that's all my understanding is. And I also don't even feel like I have avenues to readily get information to disprove what I think. That's if you even have the energy, because like a lot of the time if you believe a certain way, you don't have energy to learn something different. Like
I would say I know about ATR, right? And I haven't indulged in it because for me, Christianity, I've seen the results. Yeah. Like what she was saying, I've seen God speaking to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a personal experience. I think for some, that will be the reason why people would not venture into other religions. And some are even converted from Christianity to Islam. Because you've seen God speak to you through that. Even in the Bible, even Paul was a persecutor, but he was converted and he became the greatest writer in the Bible.
Right.
You know, so I think for most people, I think it's a personal thing. But when we started the conversation, like Chengo said, I think it's good to also research and get your information, so you know about the different religions that are there as well. So then you can get a full appreciation.
So I think the one thing that becomes clear, even in this conversation, right, is how limited our knowledge of other religions are.
Right.
And I had this really like interesting experience. I was in an Uber in Cape Town the one time, and the guy who was driving was a Muslim guy. And we just, we got to talking about religion. And it was like a debate initially, but like very lighthearted, like, I'm making my points, you're making your points. What became very quickly apparent to me was he knew a lot more about Christianity than I knew about Islam. Right? So he was much better at this debate than I was. But the one point that he made that was really striking for me at the time was he was trying to almost like explain how, we're not that different.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, but, in Christianity, Jesus is the Son of God, right? And he's like, in Islam, Jesus is a prophet. No, in fact, it started off with Jesus is a prophet in Islam. And then I said, but he's the Son of God. And he's like, are you not?
Ooh.
And now I'm like, ish.
Bars.
Anyway, you can drop me off here. But it was, I didn't have a response to that, right? Because the idea of Jesus being the Son of God and me being the Son of God is what they believe also. They just believe that he was then a prophet and not, part of some other. And then they have Muhammad, who was the last prophet.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think once we can get to a point where we do understand each other's religions more, we'll also see how they're not as different as we think they are. As interpretation and like
it can
just
help
opinion.
you be better in your religion.
And it'll help you be so much better in your religion.
So I think, like, as a closing point, I think I'm going to start with you, Chenge, and then I'll go to Bims, and then we can go around. Just one question. What, if anything, did you learn today? You can say nothing.
Chenga's here like, I was just here schooling these niggas for an hour straight. Pouring from an empty cup.
I learned just what I've always felt is that God speaks to people differently. I learned that there's that whole thing of you can't be a solo rider. You have to have a community. And perhaps that's something that, it's there, but it needs to be a bit more solid when it comes to indigenous religions. But at the same time that we know a lot, but we know nothing. So we need to educate ourselves more.
Thanks.
That's good.
Bims?
My biggest takeaway that there's been a lot of conditioning as Christians. We like to believe that we actually know, but we actually don't. And I think what I would start on is to actually dive deep into not only Christianity, but other religions as well.
Yeah.
Just to, to be self-taught, self-aware, and informed.
Okay. And yourself, Godfrey?
This conversation's been very enlightening. I think I was reminded to be more sensitive and considerate about what I don't know. So I think it definitely kicked me a bit with the ATR stuff, especially on the ancestors thing. That was very enlightening.
Right?
Because I did confess, if I can say, that I've largely demonized a lot of African stuff because, I've likened it to witchcraft and likened it to just it's anti-Christ, when it's like, no, it's just probably can be Christ, but just in an African context.
Yeah.
So that definitely kind of fetched me, like my edges, hairline. So just to be sensitive to what I don't know, and to carefully look into that, learning about others, to then fully inform where I am.
ATR definitely needs a PR consultant.
Right.
To piece it all together. But I think more so for me, it was like the parallels between different religions, right? Like I had a rudimentary understanding of what you were explaining, and we didn't touch on it so much, but it's like it's a very similar model to the Catholic model, right? Like where Mary, the mother of Jesus, is someone who can take, or the saints or whatever, right? And it's really like it's different forms of doing the same thing, which is very encouraging for me from a more like religious or spiritual standpoint. That if people who are from completely different backgrounds, if the people who were based in Zimbabwe at the time had a very similar religious model to the one that the people who were in Europe had at the same time. It probably
then
means
it's
that
probably true.
it's probably in and around the truth.
Yeah.
Some of it got lost in translation.
That's well said.
Yeah, I think like for me personally, the biggest takeaway, I was actually pretty nervous about doing this episode because people are always like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. And I think that what I learned today is like, you don't have to believe the same things, but like you should be open to talking about it from a place of understanding someone else and that person understanding you. Because ultimately we're humans and we're still like a community, and there's not convergence within our religions, but like convergence in our experiences and what we want in terms of the community that we're building. And so my takeaway is, don't be scared to talk about religion. Like, it's okay. You won't die. Well, I mean, like, we all will. Well, anyway. Another day, another time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for being on this episode. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.